You found The Drive with Matt and Jason on Sports Radio 1260 WNDE.
Welcome back to The Drive. Matt and Jason, thanks for sticking around with us. We've been talking Colts. We just finished talking with Sammy about the Olympics, but
he gets excited about the Olympics.
He gets excited about most sports.
He's probably that's all he's been getting. That's all he's done.
The joy of being a college student.
Oh gosh!
But we thought we'd flip the script a little bit and talk about something that's really close to a lot of people's hearts: fantasy football.
I love it when people say it fast. When they say fancy football, it sounds like they're saying fancy football.
Yeah. Well, if you look at some of the new Nike jerseys, it's getting that way. It's going to be fancy football.
Oh, so you're already off the Nike, huh?
I am.
Great.
No,
Great. I got 4 months to deal with that. Did you see this weekend?
So you got that to look forward to. But on line one, we've got a fantasy football guru, friend of the show, Andy Lang, joins us. Andy, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. It's fantasy football season.
Yeah, how far away are we from most drafts?
Drafts are already starting.
What?
Some leagues start before the preseason. Some leagues like to wait until right before the season starts.
Is that part of it? Is the fun of not knowing? You're rolling the dice a little more than some if you have a draft before the first preseason game.
I think it's insane to have a draft before the preseason.
I mean, they might even make the team.
That's exactly right. I mean, and there's a lot of position battles that need to be decided. So I think if you're going to have a draft, do it as close to the regular season as possible.
Sure.
Well, speaking of drafts, one of the big topics this year is that it used to be kind of a no-brainer that the strategy was pick multiple running backs in the early rounds because it was running backs were where all the points were in fantasy football. But with the change in the way offenses are run in the NFL, it seems more of a premium has been put on receivers and quarterbacks. What do you find is kind of the prevailing draft strategy right now?
Well, there's a lot of strategies. I think the smart strategy is to look at the NFL and say the NFL is officially a passing league, and you need to treat your fantasy football team like it's a fantasy league. So, like you said, the focus is off of running backs. The days of taking 2 running backs in a row, those are over. You can't do that anymore. You need to focus on the quarterbacks. And some of the elite quarterbacks are just it's amazing how many more points they score on a week-to-week basis than some of the other players.
So who do you have as your top? I mean, given I'm guessing like an Aaron Rodgers and a Tom Brady and probably Drew Brees are near the top of your quarterbacks list. I assume they would all be first-round picks in your leagues?
Absolutely. My advice to everybody is do whatever you can to get an elite quarterback. For example, the number 1 quarterback in most scoring leagues last year outscored the number 10 quarterback by almost 200 points. Break that down, that's about 12 points a game. So if you had the number 1 scoring quarterback and you played the guy with the number 10 scoring quarterback, you had a 12-point advantage every week. So that's a huge, huge number. And so I say whatever you can do to get elite quarterback, grab them. Grab them early. I think the first 3 picks in drafts should be Brees, Brady, and Rodgers. The order of those 3 can vary. It's kind of personal preference. But I think if you miss out on an elite quarterback, it could be a really long season.
So are you saying the drop-off at the quarterback position is greater than most other positions?
Absolutely. You look at guys like Rodgers, Brady, and Brees. These guys are throwing for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. You drop down to your number 10 scoring quarterback. You're looking at Tony Romo, Jay Cutler. These guys are throwing for 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns. It's a monster difference from the elite to the mediocre.
When you go back to the running backs, if we can do that real quick, it's sort of a similar thing. In the first couple rounds, there's a couple good. There's a few great running backs, but then it drops off big time, right? The Fosters and the Peterson. Those 2 come to mind, and there's maybe a couple more.
Yeah, I've got it narrowed down to the big 3. I think there's only 3 guys you can trust. I've got Arian Foster, Ray Rice, and LaShawn McCoy. I used to have Maurice Jones-Drew, but guys, his holdout is getting ugly. And normally I don't pay attention to holdouts, but Jacksonville has said we're not gonna give you more money. Jones-Drew has said I'm not coming back. it could get really, really brutal. So I've got the big three: Foster, Rice, and McCoy. After that, it is a complete cluster.
Sure.
I really don't know who is going to emerge. You've got guys like Matt Forte, Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson had a horrible year last year. Is he going to bounce back? Jamal Charles is coming off of an injury. Marshawn Lynch. Everybody has question marks. Mm-hmm. It's really personal preference. There's a couple of guys that I like. I really like Fred Jackson this year. I have him ranked in the top 10. He's going to get a majority of the carries. I also really like Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis. He's with Cincinnati. Cincinnati loves running one back. And if you're looking for guys who are safe, I think he's going to get all the carries, including the goal line carries. I think he could be a top 10 guy this year.
All right, on the topic of running backs, I'll throw you a little bit of a curveball here. Anybody from the Colts that you see worth drafting?
Well, you go back to safe. Donald Brown's going to get all the carries. It's just, can he do anything with them? I've never been a fan of Donald Brown's skill set. I think he runs with his head down. I think he runs into his offensive line too much. That being said, when he got all the carries last year, he was serviceable. He's not going to be your number one, maybe a number two or a flex play, but a lot of questions on the offense. You don't know if defenses are going to stack the box and say, we're going to make Andrew Luck throw against us. He's a risky pick, but if you're a Colts fan, I would draft him as your number two or a flex play.
All right, here's a position that seems to be confusing a lot of people this year because of the breakout of the New England players, Gronkowski and such. I'm drawing a blank on Hernandez on the other guy on the Patriots. Tight end. Where do you see the elite tight ends going in drafts?
You know what? I'm okay with taking Jimmy Graham or Rob Gronkowski in the second round.
Wow, that's awfully high for a tight end. At least it has been in the past.
Absolutely. You know what? Gronkowski had 17 touchdowns last year. He was going to be a top 5 wide receiver. If he was a wide receiver, he would have been top 5. You just don't see that. Jimmy Graham actually had a few more targets than Gronkowski, and I think the Saints are going to be throwing a lot this year. I look at the wide receiver position. It's super deep. You can draft guys at the wide receiver position after round 4 and still get a solid guy. But if you're going to draft the tight end, I say go elite with Gronkowski, Graham. I would also throw a healthy Antonio Gates and Hernandez into the mix. If you don't grab one of those elite guys, I would wait till the end of the draft and try and pick a sleeper like a Jacob Tamme, Brandon Pettigrew, or Jared Cook up.
What? How much should you look into the drama that's going on with teams like, for example, the Saints being a perfect example? Are they going to be the same team? There's a lot of distraction there. Do you kind of maybe not pick up a Jimmy Graham or some of those receivers? Maybe if you get them a little later, I guess, put less of a premium on them because of the, same thing with Jets players. Who knows what that team's going to do?
I think the Jets are going to be a disaster. The only guy I think Santonio Holmes is one of the most overrated guys in fantasy football. I don't know why people draft him where they do. I actually do like Sean Green. Go back to he's going to get the carries. He's going to get the goal line carries. He's going to have value. The Saints, they're going to be fine. They've got Drew Brees. Just because their head coach is there doesn't mean Drew Brees doesn't know how to throw a football. You're going to have Marcus Colston, who's going to frustrate every week because you don't know if he's going to go for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns or 18 yards.
Yeah.
Guys like Darren Sproles, they're going to have value. I like Mark Ingram. I think he's going to have an increased role. The Saints are going to be fine. I wouldn't put any stock fantasy-wise into their numbers.
Any sleeper defenses to look for this year?
The one I've got my eye on is Seattle. They played really well. They started to gel, and they're in a pretty weak division. I don't buy San Francisco. I don't buy Arizona with Kevin Cobb as quarterback, and I definitely don't buy St. Louis. I think Seattle could be a pretty good value if you draft them late in rounds. And more than anything with defenses, don't reach on them. You can pick up a serviceable defense in the rounds. I see people draft defenses way too early, and they never turn out to have the value that you.
Now, are you more of the strategy of pick up a defense on a matchup basis week to week, or do you like to get a good defense and let it ride all throughout the season?
We go back to it's a passing league. Teams are putting up so many points. It's hard to have an elite defense. San Francisco was elite last year. I don't think they can keep it up again this year. I think if you play the matchups each week, you'll be fine. If you do happen to grab a top 10 defense, you can leave them in there and forget about it. But I don't think playing the matchups on a week-to-week basis is a bad strategy. I think you can get away with it and have success this year.
Okay, now here's a guy who is a kind of a love him or hate him thing. He helped some people out late last year and may go higher on some draft boards based on just fandom. Where do you draft a guy like a Tim Tebow?
You don't.
Oh yeah. That's what. Thank you, Andy. You answered my. Yeah.
Even if he's the starter, I don't see how he would start in a 10-team or a 12-team league. I don't see how he sees your starting lineup unless there's a slew of injuries. He's not fantasy relevant.
27 other guys have to go down. So
exactly.
if it's down to him and Kevin Cobb and
exactly.
All right, Andy. Yeah. Before we let you go, let's hit one little fun thing here. Draft parties.
Yeah.
What makes a good draft party other than specific beverages? But, it's a fun thing to get together. Not everybody does. A lot of it's online now, but I know some do still get together. I have a buddy I swear he's been doing it before I even heard of it. He had done it for 5 years, and they still have a big, huge board. It's in his garage, and all these guys come to his house. What makes a good draft party?
Props. You just said it. You got to have a draft board.
Okay.
You got to have a prize for the previous winner. You got to do some goofy things and get people involved. And I think props. I mean, have some sparklers or fireworks for the winner for last
year.
Some
theme music,
something fun.
An official clock with a big loud horn. I mean,
yes, music always helps.
You could probably hire out the deputy commissioner of the NBA. He doesn't do anything. You could probably get him to announce your draft.
Yes.
That dweeb guy?
Yeah, the guy who's never going to get to take over.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And guys, can I mention one more guy
Sure.
for all the listeners to avoid? This guy is in the let some other idiot draft him too early.
Mm-hmm.
That's Cam Newton. Cam Newton is going as a top 5 quarterback. That is an absolute insane place to draft Cam Newton. He was all running last year, and they are not going to let him do that. He ran for 700 yards and 14 touchdowns. He is that franchise's quarterback. The Panthers are not going to let him do that. He's not going to be the goal line running back. That's going to be Mike Tolbert's job. And last year, guys, he threw for 21 touchdowns. 11 quarterbacks threw more than that. And he only had 3 300-yard passing games, none after week 4. Cam Newton is by far the most overrated guy in this draft.
Are you saying ESPN has overhyped somebody?
I know it's hard to believe, Jason. I know it's really hard to believe, but just sit back quietly when someone drafts Cam Newton in round 2 or 3, and laugh when he throws for 200 yards and a touchdown each week.
Right.
All right. Well, one last thing, we'll let you go. You mentioned last year's rookie sensation. Any of the other rookie quarterbacks, the second-year guys this year, any of those guys have a breakout season?
No, the guys that I have as breakouts, I think the Giants are going to throw the ball a lot. I think this is Eli Manning's year to shine. I think they're going to let Nix and Cruz run all over the field. Stafford's obviously going to have a good year. I do think Matt Ryan's going to have increased value. Julio Jones is in his second year. Mm-hmm. But as far as rookie quarterbacks, there's a lot of hype with Robert Griffin. I don't get it. He's with the Redskins. Not exactly the most dynamic offense in the league. I think he's going to go too early. And, Andrew Luck, he might be a guy to draft in keeper or dynasty leagues. But as far as guys that are going to help you in a 10 or 12 team year, I just don't see any rookie quarterbacks that are going to help.
Yeah, I think I would draft Mike Shanahan's frostbitten face before I took RG3.
Absolutely.
But this was Andy Lang, fantasy football expert. We will hear from Andy week to week as the year goes on. Appreciate the phone call.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that's the thing. We're not going to be on the next couple weeks. So when we get back on, I'm going to be very excited.
Because it'll be right in the thick of football.
I think we'll have had our draft by then, too, right?
I think so. I believe so.
Man.
Well, we've got KJ. Hang on. We'll talk to you right after the break. This is The Drive with Matt and Jason.